Hey guys, in today's video we'll be looking at 7 things that Lexus needs to do to stay competitive, because the premium car segment is starting to get more competitive, particularly with more other Asian manufacturers coming along into the scene. And so these things that I'm suggesting are 7 very easy or fairly easy things to do for Lexus that would make a huge difference and really give them a huge counter attack to the other competitors. So now, before we do that, the first thing to do is talk about what a brand's ethos is. And an ethos is kind of like the main guidelines that a car brand or any brand uses to make sure that what they do is in line with their brand's identity, right? It's not fair for me to criticize Lexus and say that their cars must be the fastest cars in the world, because the reality is they don't care about being the fastest cars in the world. And it wouldn't be fair to say these cars should be the cheapest cars in the world, because they're not about being the cheapest cars in the world, right? To me, if I was to summarize Lexus's ethos would be three things. Simple, reliable, and premium, right? Their cars are actually fairly simple cars. They look nice, they feel nice, but underneath a lot of this is still your basic Toyota, right? And secondly, they also want to be very reliable. That's why they're also very simple cars, and they don't change things often. They don't want to be the most complicated, most tech, groundbreaking manufacturer in the world, because they value reliability. And then thirdly, they are a premium brand. They still want their cars to be simple and reliable, but also a nice place to be in. It feels nice, and it's a bit nicer than your average entry-level car. So the things that I'm suggesting are 7 things that are in line with their brand's ethos. Now, let's get in the car and be quick, because my wife has got to poo. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is switchgear. If you look here, there's just lots of cheap plastic buttons. These just feel really cheap and tacky. They all just don't feel very satisfying to touch and press. To me, that's a huge part of the experience, is interacting with really nice buttons, switches, dials, knobs. If you go in a lot of the competitors' cars, they have much nicer switchgear. In my opinion, that is something that is simple. It's not going to be unreliable, but it's premium, totally in line with its values, and not a hard thing to change at all. That's the first thing. The second thing that Lexus should do to be competitive is they need better infotainment. Now, you might know that for, say, the past 10 years, they've been using these sort of mouse type cursor control things, and people have been complaining about these not being very user-friendly. I actually think they're pretty good, to be honest. But anyway, Lexus heard their feedback, and in the last couple of years, they have revamped their entire infotainment system, and it's now touchscreen. But my problem with it is that I would say it's very functional, but not very beautiful, right? It's just a white background with big square buttons all over it. It kind of reminds me of, if you go into McDonald's these days, you've got these self-serve kiosks with these big touchscreens, right? It looks like the same person copied that and placed it in here and just changed burgers and fries to, whatever, climate control or whatever. There's a missed opportunity there to make a nicer experience with better graphics, better animations. I've done a bit of design work in the past, and I did it back in college, and I that your average college student doing graphic design would do a far better job than whoever it is at Lexus and Toyota that's designing their infotainment. So another huge missed opportunity. I know that Apple CarPlay, Android Auto are also changing that as well. It's not as important, but still it should feel a lot nicer and look a lot nicer than what the infotainment looks like now. Now, in saying that, I do want to say one good thing about Lexus cars. Lexus is one of the few cars that is not going into this stupid trend where they are replacing physical buttons with giant touchscreens, right? Why would you spend Mercedes money just to feel and interact with a car with the same experience that you would as a 5-year-old has with an iPad these days? Everyone's got a touchscreen. And what made premium cars like Mercedes cars feel nicer was they had much better switchgear. And now it's all big touchscreens. So I'm so glad that Lexus in their latest cars, they do have nice big touchscreens, but it's not all at the cost of giving up nice physical tactile buttons. So that's one good thing for Lexus. The third thing I want to say is speaker grills. If you look at the speaker grills in this car, this has the most basic, most ugly speaker grill that you can get in any car. It just looks like any cheap car out there, just black plastic with little holes in them. And other premium car manufacturers, they will take the opportunity to make their speaker grills much nicer with these beautiful brushed aluminium finishes. They just look so much nicer and expensive. And then, like, look at this. Well, if you look at your one over there, look at that cheap, crappy speaker grill. A missed opportunity to just make the car interior feel so much nicer. The next thing, the fourth thing, is ambient lighting. Ambient lighting is like the cheapest, easiest way to make any place look nice, if it's done tastefully. If it's done really poorly, it looks really cheap. So the Lexus GS has got ambient lighting, very, very basic, just white. But I don't think there are any other Lexus cars that have ambient lighting. Maybe the LS does, or the new ES does, I don't know. But ambient lighting is not common in Lexus cars. And it costs like nothing. It's like the cheapest thing that you can do to make it feel nicer. Fifth thing which they could do is improve their gauge clusters. And if you look here, this car's about 10 years old, and the gauge cluster is pretty straightforward. You've got music, you've got navigation, you know, all the good stuff, cruise control, and it gives you some information, and that's cool and all. Now this car is 10 years old, so I'm not going to critique this car's gauge cluster too much, but what I will critique is the newer Lexus cars that are currently coming out. They still have an incredibly basic and simple gauge cluster. Now, I actually quite like mechanical gauges. I like the look and feel of a gauge. I don't like the ones that are completely digital, but I think there is still so much more that you can do with the space of the LCD screen. I wish you could view like your maps on here, you know, like I think Audi, they've got the full Google Maps kind of view on there. Just way more things that you can do in their gauge clusters. It doesn't matter whether you've got a Lamborghini or a Honda. If the gauge cluster's got an LCD screen, it's the exact same technology. You can make it look as cool as you want or as simple and basic as you want. There is no extra cost in having a nicer, more interactive gauge cluster, right? Like some cars, when you change the drive mode from eco to sport or whatever, the whole thing changes, and you can do so much with that. And yet with Lexus cars, when you change drive modes, it just goes a little bit red or a bit more blue or a bit more green, and that's it. Another huge missed opportunity for Lexus. The sixth thing is kind of a funny one. It's probably a little bit of a preference thing, but if you look at a lot of Lexus cars, they are getting better now, but usually the F-Sport models look really nice, and the non-F-Sport ones look not that nice. They look okay, but to me, I sort of feel like, why wouldn't you make the non-F-Sport cars look really good too? It seems like they intentionally make some of the non-F-Sport cars look a bit more old manny or just less modern, and I'm like, some people want the F-Sport look, want just a cooler looking car, but they don't need all the F-Sport features and the firmer ride and the wheels and this and that. I just wish Lexus made their non-F-Sport cars look nicer and make them more appealing and youthful for more people, and not in a way where you have to compromise on some of the features that you can't get in the F-Sport package. That's my sixth thing. Now my last point, my seventh point, is kind of a broader point that I do want to make about Lexus. Most other car manufacturers these days, they are trickling down a lot of premium features from their top end cars, and they're trickling them down into all their lower level cars, right? So if you look at the C-Class or the 3 Series, if you look at the A4, they have a lot of pretty impressive features in their car that are shared across the rest of the Audi or BMW or Mercedes lineup. And more car manufacturers are doing this. More and more car manufacturers are realizing that some people do want a smaller, compact car, but with more features like their bigger flagship sedans. And so Lexus, on the other hand, is very traditional. Imagine if you were the richest person in the world and you went to Lexus and you said to them, look, I love the 2023 Lexus IS. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful. I want to buy one. I've got all the money in the world, but I have heated rear seats. And they would say to you, sorry, you can't do that. And you'd say, but I've got all the money in the world. I'll pay for the highest spec IS. And they would say, sorry, you have to buy an ES or an LS. It's an old way of thinking, and Lexus needs to start really trickling more premium features, you know, more rear seat controls and functions, you know, 3-zone or 4-zone climate control, just better amenities in their car. Like, there's still no HUD on the IS. There's still no HUD. And so as a general rule, I think Lexus really needs to start looking at trickling down other more premium features into their lower end cars. And that's my 7 main points. I believe these are all simple things. They won't affect the reliability, and they will make the cars feel more premium. And they are such easy things for Lexus to do. Maybe not the last point, that's a bit more expensive, but for the rest of the points, they're not hard things to do, but they would make a huge difference to the driver experience. And the two car manufacturers that I am kind of keeping an eye on is Genesis and Mazda. Mazda has said that they are trying to be more premium, and their cars have always looked nice, and their interiors are quite nice. But Genesis, I would say, is the bigger threat. Everything that I'm saying right now, I've been having these thoughts for a long time, and it feels like Genesis gets this. Genesis understands these things, and Genesis is now striving towards a more higher end luxury car. Their seats, their buttons, their switchgear, their infotainment, their gauge clusters, so many things they are doing, and they are now, in my opinion, you're getting a lot more value for money in a Genesis than, say, a Lexus right now. The only thing Lexus has got going for it is they've got a long history of being a very reliable brand, and many of their customers like that. And Lexus also is just a bigger brand name. People know Lexus. It carries more weight than, say, Genesis does. But I think over time, these other competitors are going to start, you know, really making you think, you know, why would I buy a Lexus for this kind of money when an alternative brand offers me so much more? So anyway, those are my 7 points. I hope Lexus starts, you know, making these changes soon. They're not big changes, but they would make a huge difference, particularly for these new Lexus cars coming out. Anyway, thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more Lexus and other car content.